It's a brown girl breakdown. Brown girl, brown girl, brown girl. It's a brown girl breakdown.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to such a special Brown Girl Breakdown. I am so excited to dive into what we're about to dive into. But first and foremost, Suzi, how you doing, girl?
Girl, you know, just trying to breathe through this week, okay? But this night is going to be refreshing. It's going to be real. It's going to be fun. So I am so excited, and I am trying not to fangirl, but breathing. It's about the breathing.
So this is a really special podcast for me. This is one of the podcasts that I've been trying to get together for a very long time. So for those of you who know me and watch this, know that I am a Survivor super fan. I have loved this show. Part of it so much for me was Surrey Fields, an Exile Island, because it was one of the first times that I saw a woman of color just be a total boss and get like the attention and accolades that she deserved. But this show, as often, is a representation of society and how women of color are able to operate within it. So today we're going to be looking at Survivor from the lens of what it means to be a woman of color, not only as a fan, but we also have some special guests that we're so excited to bring along to talk about that experience on the show as well. So without any further ado, we're going to bring on our guests. We have Hi, Shireen.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here, for being with us, and for embracing the Sequester community. It's really special when Survivor people and Big Brother people and people outside come through and recognize what a beautiful place we believe this to be because of how it celebrates people. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm so excited to talk with you guys about this stuff. And I've been a huge fan of you guys through Sequester and Podquester. So
thank you. And we also have some fellow viewers to kind of chat with us about their experiences too. So we have Jennifer with us tonight. Hi, Jennifer.
hi. I'm so happy to be here.
Always wave. I do. I always wave at people. Like, I don't know. It's so weird.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Jennifer, she's one of the best to never win. And she's going to be a future winner. She came real close to runner-up, but she's going to get her crown real soon. And we have another winner joining us today. Hey, Miss Jalen.
Hello.
Everyone, thank you so much for being here for Brown Girl Breakdown. We are also going to have other special guests that are going to be coming on later, so make sure to watch out for that. But what was really important about this panel is that it was an entire panel composed of women of color who either love Survivor or have experience with Survivor. I know I'm a huge Survivor super fan. Jennifer, how long have you been a Survivor super fan?
Yeah, so my history is kind of unique just because when the first season of Survivor came out, I was 1 year old, so I really wasn't watching it at the time. But last summer, basically, I was experiencing some negativity at work, and Survivor was really my outlet for that. So I binge watched 20 seasons in a row, and it was amazing. I love it ever since, and yeah.
Jalen, how did you get into Survivor?
Oh, it was summer, I think of 2011. I had never watched Survivor before, and I had a job as a summer RA, but we had high school students, so they were in class all day. And so I just sat in my room, and the girl across the hall was obsessed with Ozzy and had this huge crush on Ozzy. And so all she would talk about was Ozzy from Survivor, Ozzy from Survivor. And so I was like, well, let me just watch Survivor. And I watched One World of all seasons. Was the first season I watched of Survivor.
I like One World. Don't hate on me for it. I like One World.
No, listen, that was the season that got me hooked. I have nothing but love for One World. And so from there, I was obsessed.
Now, Shireen, did you watch Survivor before you played it?
Oh, yeah, I was obsessed. I applied for the show. I applied for 10 years before actually getting on the show.
Wow.
It was my life dream to go on. Yeah, from I started watching it, and I was in high school. Wow, I could be Jennifer's mom. I could be her grandma.
That that is me every time I play with these youngins. But like, I remember 2004 when I was in diapers, and I was like, I remember that being like my first year of college. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, right? Like, yeah, for me, I was like a junior in high school. I was like 17 when Survivor started. I immediately fell in love with it. I immediately knew I wanted to go on. And as soon as I was age eligible, I started applying every single cycle to get on. And yeah, it was my life dream.
And it was 10 years.
And then, like, it actually, like, I think I was one of the, I mean, there had obviously been like female super fans who'd been on the show before, but at that point they didn't really cast many super fans like all that often. And specifically when they did, it was typically men. And so I think that I was, I think I'm known for being like one of the first female archetypes for like an extreme, in terms of the extreme super fan. Like when I went on, like that was probably like the second best thing that I'm known for is like how I knew like everything about the game. Like I knew about all these challenges. I knew how to, and how I broke the auction. Like I broke aspects of the game just because I had seen. Ever. Oh, thank you.
We love game changers.
Like for me, you were the first Arab person I ever saw on Survivor.
Yeah,
and that meant the world to me because and even now I think there's been 2 Arab contestants that have been on.
Yeah. So Ronnie Barda he's like North African roots, like Middle East, and like his family's now in Israel. So he's Middle Eastern adjacent. And then there's the girl's name whose family was from Jordan, and she was on David versus Goliath, and I'm blanking on her name right now. But yeah, those were the other 2, I believe, since I've been on. But yeah, and I was the first Middle Eastern contestant ever. But that was a big reason why I didn't even think I'd get on the show, because I thought like, wow, like in 15 years and 30 seasons or in 29 seasons, like there's never been a single Middle Eastern contestant. Like it's pretty clear from the casting of the show that like they want what they want, and I'm not it. And so it was also like a huge moment for me that I was the first one to be on the show. Like that's, I think, pretty cool, but also crazy.
Well, I mean, like I think for me it gave me a lot of hope because like, and we DM'd about this. Like I've always wanted. I'm sort of in the same position. Like
Natalia.
Oh, that's right. That makes sense. But I've applied for about 10 seasons now, and I get to the application page, and sometimes I'm like, should I hit Caucasian? Like, will that potentially help me? Do I like change my last name? Because I think for a lot of people of color, and especially, and this goes even further into like trans and non-binary people or anyone who's a marginalized person, it often feels like you're immediately a no before you can even get into the door. Yeah, I mean, Jalen, Jennifer, have y'all ever considered applying for Survivor?
So I have never applied, and I think part of it is like I don't necessarily see people who look like me on Survivor all of the time. And it's like I don't necessarily like I'm a bad bitch. I'm gonna say that, right? Like I look in the mirror and I see a bad bitch, but I'm not your like stereotypical like Survivor hot girl.
Yeah.
That they're gonna be able to like throw in a bikini and America's gonna be like, ooh, look at her. But I'm also
it's because they have like a specific, like you have to look a specific way to be considered hot on Survivor, and you obviously a hot mama, like you don't fit their mold of it.
Right. I'm not the Survivor hot girl, but I'm also like not old enough to be the like black auntie or like motherly tribe mate. And so I'm like, where do I fit if I'm not Sari, but I'm also not Michaela?
Yeah. I think for me, just because it's like only been a year of my obsession, I considered it for like a very brief period, but I looked into the reality of my situation, not really because of like my ethnicity, but more because of my athletic abilities. I'm not a strong swimmer, and I don't like rats and I don't like bugs. So I think the diversity and that strength would be like too much for me to deal with. Yeah. But the gameplay is like something I like love, and that's like why I love Sequester. It's like the comfort of like the safety, but still having like almost the same level of gameplay. I think that was something that really appealed to me.
Yeah.
I think the concern as well is that it's what is your longevity? I mean, because something that we have to analyze is that if we're looking at a cast where you have maybe one, maybe two, maybe three women of color, and there's not exactly a lot of diversity, that means there can't be a lot of inclusivity. And if we naturally bond towards groups who are like us. That's just the truth. We find people that we identify with and we connect with them. If I see another trans person anywhere, I'm like, you are sister. So it's easier to connect with people who look like you, who share something in common with you. And when it comes to a cast that is majoritively cis, straight, white players, people of color tend to be at a disadvantage. Women tend to be at a disadvantage because of the structure of Survivor. So then when you have women of color who are at the intersection of that, you're immediately seeing women of color being targeted very early. I mean, how many times has a woman of color been the first boot of a season? So was the first boot on your season, Shereen. And hi, Karishma!
Hi,
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry I'm late.
You're
I
so
didn't mean to
good.
interrupt y'all.
No, thank you so much for being here. Oh, this panel is like filling my heart with joy and happiness and glory. Carissa, to catch you up, right now we're sort of talking about like the difficulty setting that you are facing when you're a woman of color on the show, and especially because of like the lack of diversity and inclusivity within the cast. I mean, Carissa, I think you're the only person of your ethnicity who's on your season, and it just says something when you are able to connect with someone that you share identity with, that you share commonality with, that you share experiences with. How did it feel for you when you were out on an island and you were trying to like form bonds and form relationships with people that you didn't necessarily share those physical commonalities with?
Well, I think Shireen and I have this in common. We're the first of our, right? I'm the first. I'm the first Indian American to be on, and I don't want to guess, Shireen, exactly where you're from, but I do know you're the first, and so landmark. So I mean, it's a lot of responsibility, you know, first of all, you know, on a platform like Survivor. And you're not necessarily representing an entire community, but you are, if you are, you know, one of the first, or if you're the only ones on the cast, you are, you know, coming in there with that on your shoulders. And I think we noticed really early on that there was more diversity in my cast than had been seen in prior seasons.
Yeah.
We had a lot more people of color and a lot more diversity in terms of, you know, all different factors. And so that made it a little bit better. You know, that was something I think we celebrated that right from the get-go. It was something that was recognized on day one in our cast. We'd look around and just sort of celebrate that. So that was a good jumping point. But, you know, after that first day, you're right. You know, it was really difficult finding that connection with people because, you know, Survivor's like a microcosm of society. There's no rhyme or reason, but even, you know, the majority of my personal friends are of Indian descent and South Asian descent. And I was born and raised here. You know, there's no real reason for it aside from it's just, you know, who you have commonalities with, like y'all said, and who you sort of feel like maybe had a similar upbringing. And so you see the world in similar shades. And that was something that I had a really difficult time with on Survivor. I didn't anticipate having a difficult time with that, but I certainly did. I don't know, Shireen, if you know, had a similar experience, or if you didn't.
No, my whole Survivor experience was just tinged with blatant sexism and racism.
Well, it's interesting because Big Brother, you can see it live. You see the live feeds. You know, like there's a TMZ article that comes out when you call it, but Survivor's all edited. So like I personally didn't have any idea until we had that conversation that like everything was blatant. I was sort of under the idea from the edit that everything like wasn't intentional and it was a lot of like unconscious bias.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a full range, right? And it's like hard to separate when you're intersectional, right? So like I was also the fattest woman on my season, and you might not think that because like Like, I'm not like, right. And that's also something that like I've struggled with weight a whole lot my whole life, and like that was the thinnest I'd ever been by a mile in my whole life. And the first day, a guy on my tribe like looked like straight up to me and Carolyn, looked at our faces and said, "Well, you're fat, but she's old, so we'll get rid of her first, and then you're second, so you don't have to worry." In front to both of us, to our faces. Yeah, it was Joaquin said.
I got that too. I got that. Oh, you're the heaviest one. Yeah.
Yeah, they just say it to you like matter of factly. And
It's
like,
Survivor. You got it.
Yeah.
What?
Okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
But you know what? It's not
Like,
good. It's not
we have to, like,
TV and like, yeah.
Like, yeah, we were talking a little bit, Karishma, about like our like what we apply for and how we apply and like why we would keep applying, I guess is part of my questions is like why keep applying. Like, for example, I know Sharifa and I talked about this a little bit on a podcast about Big Brother last week about the fact that I've never applied for Big Brother, even though I'm a big, huge fan, because there's no physical way I could fucking do those comps. Like, no, hello, wall comp, hello. Do I even have to get up there? No, we're not doing it. The end. But also, like, why? So for me, I would just not apply. Like, the fact that the circle came out, I was like, oh, that's actually something I could apply for. Sequester is something I can do. And it allows me to game while also, like, not having to worry about, I mean, we're not going to pretend like these things aren't issues in those kinds of games. But, you know, the one thing I don't have to worry about is the instant rejection based on something like ability. So what kept y'all applying after not seeing yourself represented? Like, what made you keep going back to, I don't know, it's hard. It's like, you know, like Jalen said, you see a bad bitch in the mirror. Did you change the way you were applying? What made y'all say, I don't care, I'm coming back until you see me?
So I don't know if you guys saw, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you all saw, like when Audrey made that powerful statement, was it like a couple weeks ago, a week ago, about like how Survivor was, you know, like a big part of her life as well. It was the first time that I'd actually read something that I really related to about why Survivor was my life dream to go on. And like, and it was like, it was rooted from a place of pain. Like I grew up in a really violent home. And like Survivor offered a sense of escapism for me. And so like, for me, it was always something different. Like I was like, it's exactly the kind of game that I'm into. Like, 'cause I'm like a big gamer. And then, but I also loved the idea of just like going and starting fresh somewhere and stripping down to nothing, and the outdoors, like all of it was perfect for me, but it was at its core, a fantasy, an escapist fantasy, rooted in a painful upbringing. And that's what kept me applying.
I like one thing I want to focus on, because I know we're going to be getting into like really heavy, really dark things, but like with everything that you experienced and everything that happened, and I can't imagine what you went through, I can't speak to what it meant to me to see you and to watch you on that show, especially as an Arab woman. I had never expected to see that, and to see you talk about your experiences and to be able to be like, oh my God, I know what she's talking about. Like, I have experiences in that. It just like, it meant the world. And it's, for me, it's one of those strange things. It's like why I still come back to Survivor, why I still connect with Survivor, despite the fact that we're seeing blatant sexism every single season. That doesn't get solved when you have a 10-minute round table at jury where we're gonna say, okay, we'll call Sarah Lacina now. No, it's not fixed. Go change your editing crew. But like, that's, I think the show, it
rebuild the whole situation.
has a tendency to want to like put band-aids on things. And I'm not gonna lie, there's moments like when Zeke went through being outed on live television by Varner, by another member of the LGBTQ community, like that meant a lot, because there had been like zero trans representation up until that point. And it's awful that how that was created, but how Zeke held himself in that moment and how he's held space in that moment it means a lot. So sometimes like Survivor can really add change into the minds of its viewership. But what's problematic about those moments where we're talking at Tribal Council about sexism we're not actually solving anything. Nothing's really changing. The majority of your crew is still male. The majority of your editors are still male. The majority of the people making decisions and in leadership roles are male. So like, and white men at that. So there's still like, I know as a viewer, we talk about Edgic for women and the edit for women is always going to be different. It always is different, always has been different. And that wasn't solved from like a 10-minute conversation that happened at Tribal Council. So Jennifer, when you see moments like that, when you see that they're trying to actually address racism, sexism, and general marginalization on Survivor, do you feel like there's change that's actually happening, or have you felt that it's been superficial?
Yeah, so you weren't here, Karishma, but the first season I watched live was actually your season. So like specifically, I think about like, no, it's totally fine. No, that's another conversation. Okay. But I was thinking like, I think when the whole situation with like Kelly specifically here was like kind of traumatizing for me specifically, just because of how like a coworker of mine kind of went through like something really similar like a few months before that episode aired, and then the episode aired, and like Survivor was like my form of escapism. So I was like, after I watched the episode, I was so gutted. I was like, there's no hope in this world, essentially, because like something that I felt like I held so sacred in my life, like change, like something so sacred could be so like negatively impacted. It's still like it's still so hard for me to like accept it, especially like after like hearing how Zeke like left the season, and like after hearing how Zeke like got all that help and therapy and the platform, and then seeing how Kelly got nothing, like because I feel like my personality to Kelly, not knowing her at all, obviously, but like my personality to her is very similar. Like we're very straightforward, we're very blunt, and like if I play Survivor, I would probably play a lot like her, honestly. And then seeing how she was mistreated by like everyone, it like ruins me essentially.
And that's like the horrible irony of the show also, is that often the people that mistreat us most are other marginalized people. Zeke was outed by a gay man. I was verbally assaulted in a racist attack by an African-American man. Kelly was targeted by other women and people of color, like
Gandia like, on Thailand.
Oh God, and got the Gandia situation, like even Sue Hawk, like by a gay man, and it's like, and that's not, and like it's like the show that. And honestly, I think it points a lot to casting and the way that the show is cast, but also that the pressure, the ways in which the show applies pressure to marginalized people that it doesn't to the non-marginalized people, that creates this kind of environment.
There's a very us versus them situation that happens for marginalized people that pressures them to become, the winning side, which is not going to be the side of marginalized people. So it already puts you on an attack mode in a game that's set up to only reward one person. So the way that puts, and I think we've seen David talk about a little bit on Big Brother this season too, about how he's been utilized as a weapon from some of the people who have like gotten racist, who made racist remarks last season, and we see then people of color are tokenized to make these people look okay, or make the show look okay in general, because they're like, oh, we can edit around that and show you that we have successful people of color, or people of color who are also problematic, so that makes it okay for white people to be problematic or whatever. Like they just utilize marginalized people against each other in this way that still only benefits, and I'm very frank about this, white supremacy is the end, period. Like it's about upholding those structures that are in place, that are built on the foundations of white supremacy, and they don't want to break the foundations down. So when they take down one layer, it doesn't matter because the whole structure is built on that.
Well, casting is searching for microaggressions, right? That's when you go through all that casting. And as Shireen, you remember they do all this psychological testing on you, dig really deep. And at least for me, you know, dug so deep, got me to the point to just be really vulnerable and just tell them, you know, what's going on and what troubles me, what makes me happy, what kind of people I surround myself with. Very specifically, what kind of people I do not surround myself with. And they know as producers, as casting agents, what their job is to then identify those microaggressions and go ahead and fill the island with people who are going to be facing each other, right? And going to be pointing the guns at each other. I know I can point out at least three. I can point out 3 direct people on my season. I won't name names, but I can, who directly correlate with the exact kind of person that I identified in those psychological tests as people who, you know, I do not surround myself around. I've had bad interactions with who do, you know, who do not treat me fairly, et cetera, et cetera. And to see that being chosen to be put on an island with me, on a tribe with me, you know, from the get-go type of a thing, it was all pointed. It was all purposeful. It's all on purpose. I don't want to sort of change subject, but Shireen, I do want to tell you, you know, I had moments of such extreme loneliness on that island that I've never in my life felt before, and had to find strength in places that I had no idea where I could possibly find them from. And I know that I remembered back to your hand raise moment, and I thought how alone she must have felt
The whole time.
and where she found that strength from. It came from somewhere, because she stood up alone in that moment. And so I was like, you know what? It exists. The ability to take a step forward and find the strength to just speak up for yourself, even if you feel marginalized, even if you feel attacked by all these sexist and racist people around you, all these people who are judging you and treating you poorly and behaving in ways that would never be acceptable in regular society, let's face it. You can still find that strength to remember who you are, what's important to you, and then raise your hand. And I think that's really important to point out, you know, especially future players, people out there who are going to be part of any other reality show or any kind of other experience, that no matter how alone you are, always remember what is important to you. What do you stand for? And it doesn't matter if all the other people around you don't agree with you, don't back you up. They're all, whatever it is, it's important, you know, I did this a lot too. And I think about it all the time, but now I have to remember, do not try to hide in the shadow. Yeah. And I did it so much in my season, and it's a regret that I have to live with, that I was so scared. I let that fear take over a lot. And it was a fear coming from a place of rejection and loneliness. And I think it brought me back and made me stronger. I mean, I think about it. I hate that I think about it still almost every day, because it's still so darn fresh for me. But it's important to know, because are they going to change? I hope so. I hope they change in the right direction. But do they still have to make a show for entertainment? They do. And so to some extent, this is going to continue.
Yeah.
I think it's important for the people who play the game to take some responsibility. And it's a fantastic responsibility to take the bull by the horns and force it. Hey, I'm not going to give you any role to play. I'm going to force you to have to edit this into the show. You have no choice. I'm not going to give you other footage, you know, and only people who have been through it can sort of realize that there's opportunity for that in future players. That's all I have to say.
I do want to encourage you to be kind to yourself, though, too, because I mean, you're saying you think about it every day, and that's so hard, because I know that we all have those moments, and certainly not on a national platform situation, where we regret not doing what we think we could have done more in. And I do want to encourage us to be kind to ourselves and think about the things you would say to somebody else who came to that, and kind of keep the same energy with yourself that you would keep for your loved ones, because it is a unique experience that I can't even pretend like I'm gonna understand that experience. It's intense and insane, but I admire getting through it, period, no matter how you did it. And just being there is such a is an act of courage to me, because like we've all said, we know what, we're not stupid. We can, like, there's only a certain amount they can hide from some of us, right? Like, we know how to read a room. We know what's safe and what's not safe. So for y'all to put yourselves in the position that you know that you were going to have to, and to know that you were going to have to probably be one of the few, if and possibly only representations, like, I think it's just amazing to even do it. So, I mean, I know you have regrets about the way you played your game, but I think it was just fantastic that you were there and that you did do the things that you did, and that you've come back and you've still been like, hey, I'm a gamer and I'm a person in this community, and you're not, you may think that, you know, sometimes it was hard, but I'm still going to be here and I'm still going to say what I have to say, and you are growing from it. So I think that, you know, you're such a role model. So I want to balance those two, like, ideas.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, I think that there's so sort of like a commonality within like everyone in this panel, like great emotion connected to this show. And you have 4 people who've never been on it, who just watch it as fans and like cannot imagine what that experience is like. And you have 2 people who've gone through that entire process. And it's so interesting to me that this fear of something that we all had or had some sort of interest in provides a platform that sort of creates this emotional harm. As a viewer and as someone who's participated in it. And this is a wonderful moment. Hi, Jatia.
Oh no.
Oh, we lost her. It looks like she's in her car, so hopefully she'll hop back in a second.
But I just know, like, as a viewer, to continuously watch women of color be targeted so quickly and to feel like they don't have a chance at winning the game is heartbreaking. And just going from my own experiences of the Survivor Sequester, the second one, being on Taryn's stream, watching this happen again. Shireen, you were there, you were in the game, and people of color were continuously sort of targeted. And none of it was ever intentional, but that's what was happening. And it felt like, for me, it felt so much like I was watching the actual show. It just felt like I was watching another season of Survivor, like I was watching Survivor Palau, and it was happening. And I said something, and that created this very big reaction when I called out the fact that the white players were targeting people of color, whether they were consciously aware or not. And that led to a lot of angry DMs and people upset with me, and players in the cast who were upset and felt like their character was maligned. And for me, it's like, it's one of those moments where I sort of look back and I'm like, do I regret that? Do I regret saying something? Do I regret calling it out? And I have to like stand in it for myself and say like, no, because I want people to be nervous about that. I want them to be worried about that. I don't want the dialogue to be created to be like, oh, well, we can't go after them now because it would look a certain way. I want the dialogue to be like, hey, I recognize that I don't necessarily share this commonality with this person, but like, maybe I should open up. Maybe I should try to build a bridge. Maybe I should try to create a relationship, because potentially this person can really help me in the game. That's all that I want to see on Survivor. That's the only thing that I want to see change. And I think it comes from casting people that are willing to play the game with people that they're unfamiliar with. And Karishma, what's really amazing about what you just spoke about is the fact that like, that's not happening. There isn't this drive to like, to actually create open-mindedness. And I think so much of that is because of the idea of like, who's watching and the viewership that's watching and what they need to see. Jalen, with everything that we're sort of like airing right now, what is sort of like the emotional impact that Survivor has had for you as a fan?
Yeah. The thing that I keep thinking about as we're talking is like, what is our responsibility as an audience? The producers are trying to create a show that they think we as an audience want to see, that we will be entertained by. So why is this entertaining to people? Why is it entertaining to see women attack other women, or to see people of color just immediately booted? Like, where does that come from in our societal roots before it shows up in Survivor? And I think as much as we talk about like Survivor being this kind of like idea of escapism, I think people also sometimes think that Survivor is also an opportunity to like escape racism and sexism. And really, it's just edited out of the show. It's still there. People are still fat phobic. People are still queer phobic, and we just don't always see it. And so I think people approach it from this lens of, oh, well, you get to remove everything else and you just get to play, but all of those factors are still there and still weighing. Like I feel like every season, I'm like, cool. Let me get my little like 1 or 2 Black people and let me root for them. I usually don't get to root for them for long, but like we'll stand them so hard for the few episodes that they're on. I'm like, okay, cool. I guess we're done with that now.
Hey y'all.
Hi, Jatia.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Can you guys hear me? I'm stealing Wi-Fi from Target. I'm standing outside.
We love it.
No,
We love
literally,
it.
I am. So I was stuck in traffic, and anyway, so I decided to just pull over and use my Wi-Fi from Target. How are you guys? I've been listening.
Amazing. We're doing great. It's so wonderful to get to talk to you because, like, watching Survivor Cagayan, that was one of the first times that we saw like 2 women of color starting on the same tribe together, and we sort of saw like what your experiences were on the show and how like you were sort of portrayed. And I know I'm really curious, and if you're willing to talk about like what were your experiences about how you saw that you were edited from the show once everything started to air.
So, well, where to start?
That's also a massive question, and we can simmer into it too.
So many things. I don't want to get thrown out from asked to leave from the sidewalk outside of Target, but so I think it was interesting because when Tasha and I were cast, we actually went to the same casting, and when we went to the casting, they told us they were looking for an Asian woman and an African American woman. So Tasha and I were actually, to fill one slot. And it ended up that they casted both of us and no other Asian women, because there was like 4 or 5 Black women. There were 3 Black women actually and 3 Asian women. That's who they brought out there. And from that group, it just ended up being me and Tasha. And I think since we were in casting together, and it was just us because we were like late season replacements, and we automatically had a bond. So her and I always knew what was going on, even when it seemed like everything was going crazy. But it's very interesting because that's not how they showed it. And they showed it to fit their narrative. It is a white male centric show, and they're always going to show it from a white male centric perspective because that is the majority of the people who watch the show and who make the show. So it was sad to see. It was kind of interesting because when I got cast, like, well, I want to see how they, I don't know. I didn't think they would have.
Come on, Target, come through.
Come through, Target Wi-Fi.
We know they have that bougie Wi-Fi. Like,
Right.
everything costs so much. So where are they at with it? Oh,
It's the white man silencing her.
corporations again.
God damn it, CBS.
Oh no.
Jalen, while we hopefully have Jatia maybe jump back on, I did want to mention something that you said. For me, it's almost easier to watch once the people of color are gone because I don't have to worry about the pain that it causes me because it actively causes me so much pain to know that what's happening and to watch it. Oh, look, Target came through.
No. There we go.
Target.
Look, I'm trying again. Okay, so I found the back spot closer to the door.
It was doing good for a while there.
Yeah, she was holding down strong.
I'm like, ooh, should I go in the store and hide under like the racks of my neck? So if I
They said
get out,
it's a
I'll try to come back.
conspiracy.
Well, anyway, what I was saying was, I mean, like I said, me and Tasha always knew what was going on, and we always had each other's backs until like the very final tribal council, where even then they were voting to keep me, and literally Jeff got in and like it was the longest tribal council, they said. I don't know, I only been to 3. And I was just talking. I think I'm a pretty good talker. I think that's one of my strengths. And he just would not let us go until they decided to vote me out. So I don't know. It's definitely a perspective that production pushes, and they're trying to tell a narrative and they're trying to tell a story. So, you know, I just feel like a lot of people who look like us don't fit in their stories.
And I just want to say, like, Spencer told me that exact same thing. Spencer said, like, Jeff Probst held you all hostage until they decided to vote out Jatia instead of Spencer.
Yeah.
Spencer. Oh.
Yeah.
And you know what? Props to Spencer, because I think he had a very interesting arc where, you know, the first time out, he was like this golden boy, and, you know, he just loved him. That's just people honking outside. It's hard to go. Don't worry about that. And the second time around, he was no longer the golden boy, and so he kind of saw how people are treated who are not like in the good graces of production.
Oh yeah.
I hope you caught most of that. Sorry.
No, we got it.
Well, it's interesting because I've never connected before. It's easier to see on Big Brother when you see like a production favorite and you can very visibly see how they're favored because of those live feeds. I never registered that like production would ever have any sort of like preferences towards the cast members. It always seemed, and this is my own ignorance and naivete, it always seemed like everyone was sort of on the same like leveled playing ground.
So we can tell, I could tell after that first tribal who the favorites were, who Jeff's favorites were. You can tell, I mean, the tribal's go on for so much longer than you see. And there's a lot of downtime too, where you're just sitting there sort of, you know, talking to Jeff and whatever, and just kind of hanging around a little bit. And it's clear as day who the favorites are. I mean, all the way down to like who he decides, if he's like tossing Flint to somebody at the end, like, yeah, you got like who he decides to toss it to, stuff like that. You know who the favorites are. You figured it out.
Yeah. Also in challenge commentary, when he's like yelling stuff out, like he's often saying, and he warns you, he's like, sometimes I'm just yelling stuff out so that we have more audio of me during the challenge to like splice in when it's appropriate. And often he'll just be like, Joey Amazing is amazing again, always being so amazing. Joe, amazing, amazing. Shireen sucking at life, always sucking at life. Shireen sucking at life. And just like, and I'll be like, just, you know, I'll be not sucking at life. Joe will be sucking at life, and he's yelling this shit out, and you're like, fucking excuse me? Like what? And it totally gives away who his favorites are during that.
That she's right. That's the biggest tell. His commentary just goes nonstop, and they splice it up for the episode. But during the actual challenge, he's like screaming his lungs out, and he's screaming things that like don't relate to what's actually going on. And she's completely right. Like a basketball throwing thing. He'll say something like, oh, and he hits it again. And I'm like, nobody hit anything. He didn't. Right. The white dude didn't hit anything. I go, oh, Karishma, once again, holding her team down. And I look over and I'm like at the same spot as the person next to me. And I'm like, how? And then they edit it to make it look like that. And then there was one point where like I screamed back at him, and then my tribe mates were like, shut up, Karishma, you're gonna make us lose. So I had to stop. But I got so angry. And after the challenge, was standing there soaking wet, and I remember looking at him and be like, you like saying you like my name that much, you like saying it that much, don't you, Jeff? And he's like, look, I'm just calling it as I see it. I'm like, no.
That's what he always fucking says. I'm just calling it as I see it. What can I say? This generic white man was carrying the team on its back, and you suck.
Exactly.
That was an amazing impersonation.
You're the fastest girl on the tribe, so you're the one who's going to be the slowest, and that's just the way it is. The narrative is we're going to, you know, I figured this out, but production figured out Krishna's going to get votes every tribal, but we need to write that narrative of where that's coming from. They figured that out early on, and so he's throwing these down like she sucks at life. She sucks at life. To build that narrative as to why Karishma's getting votes at every tribal. And it was very frustrating because it does get in your head, right? It does. And not even your head, it gets in, here's the worst, it gets in everyone else.
It gets into their head. Yeah.
And so
they also,
even though it wasn't really happening, they go back to the camp and they're like, we lost because of Karishma. Like, it's in their head. And it's like, well, okay, didn't you see the guy not hit the, okay.
Yeah.
You're right, 100%. I didn't even think of that. That's so true. And that's how you know. And I had conversations with Jeff about that, even afterwards. I was very upset. Even afterwards, like from my office, I was like, this is not, like, you realize what you're doing. And it's very, political responses. Because they're writing a show. They're writing a script. They're writing a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And relying on tropes to sell it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this was clear as day.
Found a spot.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Liza G.
Come on, Jean. Come
Hello.
on, Jean.
What you need? What you got? What you got? So I just want to
Legend.
I totally agree that they have their own narrative. They have story editors that are already there, and they have a story. And I'm pretty sure they get together every evening or whatever to talk about what's happened and how that feeds into the story. Jean, that's pretty funny. So I mean, they have to pick favorites, and they do, and they really cater towards their favorites, and it's very apparent. I agree that like when you're in the challenge, just screaming out things that like are not even actually what's happening at times. Like that happened to me during the puzzle, and make no mistake, I fucked that puzzle up, let's be honest. But it did not help him when he's yelling like, oh, she's failing at life, oh my god, her mother is gonna be so disappointed. That's what I heard from him. Not exactly, but that is the kind of stuff that he says, and it doesn't always have to be what's actually happening, but it's a little bit distracting and puts you off your game. And so also, like, all the camera people are not people who look like you, so it's like you just all alone out there. It mentally affects you, and it just kind of cascades. And even despite all that, I still didn't think I was going to get be made to look stupid. I thought I was going to be made to look devious, but not stupid,
And that was so clear, and Keith said it. Like, Jeff never had a single nice thing to say about Keith in challenges. And that was something as a viewer that hit me, just like constantly seeing Jeff beat up on this black man. Like, Keith, the weakest swimmer again, weakest person on his tribe, sucking at the challenge. Keith's tribe losing again because of Keith. And I think
it's psychological, because it's Jeff's majestic voice is saying it, so it's it's an authoritative voice, so that's what you believe.
Yeah,
and it makes sense.
He's literally building the narrative as the game goes on, and it's really hard to go against the person who is an executive producer and the host of the show, who literally has the mic over you. It's like trying to scream down a comedian in the club,
Well, and that gender bias has been so apparent and for so long. And I think that's one of the reasons I brought up that moment for Winners at War, when they were like, we can call you Lucina now. Like, Jeff Probst just fixed sexism. And it's like, wait, hold on. No, let's look at this. And then let's go back. Because for me, one of the most upsetting moments from Survivor was watching Survivor Thailand and seeing what happened to Gandia and seeing how that, and it's something that I still feel has never been addressed, has never been owned up. The apologies haven't been made, maybe behind the scenes, I don't know. But I had a really strong affinity towards Gandia. I loved her energy. I thought she was this very earthy, kooky woman. And it was exciting to see a character. And then we see what happens to her with this man, also a man of color, who, let's call a spade, molested her. And she called it out, but not only was she made to suddenly become the villain from her tribe, that was the narrative that Jeff was also pushing as well at that tribal council. And everything that was crafted was made to look like Gandia was making a mountain out of a molehill and trying to tarnish this man's reputation, when there was actual footage of what happened. And so you can't talk now. You can't have a tribal council and act like you suddenly fix everything in 10 minutes when there's such a staunch history of how, like, not only his sexism, but the sexism of the people a part of crafting the show, the cameramen, the storytellers, the editors, has completely influenced how viewers have seen the females on the show.
And then, in addition to that, another disgusting aspect of Thailand for me, why it's probably like my least favorite season of all the seasons, is like that. Conversely, then like on the flip side, on the other tribe, you had Xi'an, who's also treated like garbage, where they like went after just the way that she ate, and all these, like, there are all these easy ways that are typically tied to, I mean, like they're always tied to outsiders, but particularly like people of color, and specifically, like immigrants. Of like the food that they eat and the way that they eat, like they're disgusting, dirty people because she ate like more of the fish head or whatever. And I just remember, I mean, everything about that season to me is absolutely disgusting, and it really boiled down to the way that Gandia was treated and the way that Xi'an was treated.
100%.
And I remember personally when I was watching that season, I also thought like, wow, if I would be the Xi'an on this show, and like in a lot of ways I kind of was, and like, well, I was vilified a lot for the way that I ate on the show.
Well, I mean, even with her, like, she got vilified at the merge because she said, like, I'm not going to be treated like this. I'm going to go work with people who haven't treated me like crap. And that was the whole, like, iconic false merge that ended up screwing her over. And it was, straight, I agree. It was so tough to watch her, like, finally have her moment where she was going to stand up to these people. And once again, she became powerless.
Snatched. Yeah. Oh, you sneaky little Asian bitch.
Yep.
So that's why I was like, I know everybody's going to understand exactly why I'm throwing this rice out. I was like, because I'm not going to sit up here and just go along and, be treated like this. And so when my tribe tried to sit down and just be like, oh, you ain't shit, I'm going to vote you out, I'm be like, oh, I got something for your ass.
To your face!
I thought that would, I thought that would totally be apparent, but clearly that's not how, I guess, the production saw it. So I don't know. But it was good TV, at least.
Well, but it was good TV at what cost? Like, that's the thing, is like that edit made you just seem like erratic. And it wasn't even like this mischievous, sneaky thing. It was like, oh, well, is she actually smart? What is she doing? She's running around and she's doing all these things. And it like shaped up to tell a narrative at your expense. And like, what is really frustrating is, as women of color, you're not like, there's so many other things you're saying when you do that, when you edit someone like that. And there's not a conscious awareness of the fact that that's problematic.
And when people watch, I was just gonna say, when people watch Cagayan and then they tell me like, wow, that tribe was so dumb for not voting out Jatia after she threw out the rice, I say to them, how bad must Garrett have been that they kept the girl who threw out the rice and voted him out? That's all.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to show that.
I was just going to say that. No, they show that. It just reminds me of like, those guys who say their ex-girlfriends are crazy. And so like all the guys are like, yeah, ex-girlfriend, she seems crazy. And all the girls are like, what you do to that girl? You know what I mean? Like, we have, as viewers, have to read so much harder, and we learn how to read so differently. Television, and we still are missing so much, like Sharifa was saying. We're still being naive. We're still like, and we come into this knowing that we have to, play differently, play harder, play 3 times as different. So we still emphasize, we come in, I can't say that word right now.
Emphasizing?
We come in, no, feeling for y'all.
Emphasizing.
This is why I write and don't talk. But yes, we feel for y'all, and we know what y'all are gonna have to deal with, and still we don't even know an 18th of it, of your struggles. And we have been trained by society to read dangerous and bad situations, and we still can't even get a read on what's happening there.
And that's why it's such a jarring difference when we get to see y'all on Sequester. And like all 3 of you made it to Final 5, and like Jatia, Karishma, Shireen, like you bossed your games. Like y'all were running shit. And you like deserve to win. Like Karishma, you were such a threat to win. Jatia, you won. Shireen, you were bossing. Like, and it was such a difference from how we saw you on Survivor. But here's the thing, where like there's no edit. We're seeing exactly how you're gaming, and we're seeing the strong, fierce, powerful players that you are. Did you ever feel like did you ever feel from either while you were on Sequester or after Sequester that you felt like you were more authentically portrayed?
The thing about Sequester for me was I was able to sort of separate the difficulty of being out in the elements. And that from the get-go, was really difficult for me, and that kind of threw me off. And then, the aggressions and everything. This was just like more, and then I made a choice from the beginning that this was, I was just gonna have fun. This was not gonna be personal. It was gonna be fun. It was gonna be all game. Every decision made, it was gonna be game. And so when that decision is made in your head, and that's not made in Survivor, right? Because you're there for $1 million. So it's not, but in Sequester, you could think like, okay, this is not for $1 million. This is for like bragging rights. And this is for a game that you can continue to play. And because of that, I think I was just, to answer your question, I feel like it was just a better use of like the strengths that I feel I had. And it was just, I had a lot of fun, and it was a better representation of me because, I was able to set the stuff that made Survivor particularly really hard aside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me,
I agree. Sorry. I'm
No,
going
you
to
go.
get in while my internet is still working really quick because it's going to have any minute. So I think that for me, when I, went on Survivor, I didn't think I was going to be a challenge beast. I thought I was going to be a challenge okayer, but I knew my real strength was I was good at communicating, and I feel like I'm very analytic. And so those are the two things I went in with. I think there's a lot more of that. And also, it takes 5 hours. I have no freaking patience. I knew that when I went on Survivor. So I was really grateful for playing Sequester. I did stuff like this before. I was in a board game club, and I played, different things like Dominion. So it was right up my alley too, which is why I still like to play. I love Dominion, girl. I will destroy you at Dominion. Anyway,
We have a good night anytime, girl. Anytime.
set it up. Let's do fun. So I think it played more to my strengths, and I'm really happy to have found it. Wish I found it before.
Shireen, what were you going to say?
I was going to say also for my Sequester season, and it was the international Survivor season, which is why I wanted to do it and why I participated in it, is that I was around a lot more people that are a lot closer to being my people. And so the people who ended up controlling the game my season, myself included, we were the nerds, the nerd super fans who were also bullied a lot. Most of us were bullied a lot on our seasons of Survivor. And that's its own fucking bond that you can't ever understand until you're out in the middle of, an island and no one talks to you for days on end, except for the monkeys. And that's a bond that I had with some of those people. And they were all nerdy white boys, and that I was one of them. And then we also had international people who also have that international experience. My parents were immigrants. That's I also just feel more comfortable with international people with, just sort of different, we're different from Americans.
Yeah.
And then, so there were more people for me who would work with me. That was the thing, is on my, first Survivor season, I was with people who wouldn't work with it. I wasn't playing Survivor. I was playing this whole other different game of just will you even talk to me? No.
Yeah.
Cool. And on Sequester, I was immediately
your season, Sharon, they did you dirty. That was not right. And I was rooting for you. So I just wanted to jump in.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And so so I guess with Sequester, I got to just it wasn't even for me about the elements or anything. It was just about people who saw me for me and would work with me.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for
say
sharing.
that I think Survivor is kind of stacked for the box. And it's funny because they make these people into like masterminds, and I'm like, I met that person. They are a very nice, lovely person, but I would not describe them as a strategic. You know, I mean, it's geared towards, I want to say, working class kind of blue collar people, and they trying to make those people shine. A lot of times they don't, and I understand that, but it shouldn't be to the detriment of others.
Well, I always felt like, and I feel this way playing orgs, I feel this way playing Sequester, cannot imagine what that experience is like on the island, but it always feels like you're playing two games. You're playing like the actual game of Survivor, and then you're playing what it means to be a marginalized person within this structure. And I've always felt, and I will argue to the day is done, that it is so much more difficult to win Survivor as a person of color, as a woman, and especially at the intersection of both. And it's why I feel like Giuseppe Towery has never gotten the credit that she deserved for being the first Black winner, because you cannot tell me it is not more difficult to play this game as a marginalized person.
Yeah, and it makes Sandra's wins so much more impressive. It makes her so clearly the best player ever, because not only is she a woman of color who has an accent, like her color is in your fucking face, and she's like an immigrant, and then and on top of that, she doesn't have the jock body, she's like the mom bod, and she fucking wins it 2 out of 2, like her first 2 out of 2. Yeah, everybody else can get fucked.
But then Tony comes and suddenly he's the greatest, and I'm like, sis, you left second in your second game. But what are we
First. He left first.
He left. I thought he left.
No,
I thought
second.
Sierra was first,
Oh,
and then
Who was
Yeah,
first?
he was second.
it was
Sierra.
Sierra was first, and then he was second. But it's just like, wow, like the fan base was so ready to crown him like the best to ever play, and I'm like, Sandra was right there. What are we doing? What are we saying?
Yeah, and she's an aggressive woman, like a bold woman on the show. She's not out here just like, oh, hey.
Gigi, you don't gotta raise your hands. Come on in.
Yeah, I'm gonna raise my hand because I'm gonna get off, but with this janky ass internet. But thank you for having me. It was so great to talk to you guys. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Karishma. Good to see you guys again. Love y'all. I'm about to get up out of here and get on my way.
Good luck
home.
at
I'm
Winners
stuck
at
in
War.
traffic. Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for being here, Gigi.
Bye. Great conversation.
Bye.
I love
Oh my
the commitment. Showing up from Target.
That's
What
that's
women
where I
do
need
for
to
other
go.
women? What women do for other women? I'm just saying.
So all good things do have to come to the end. I feel like we have another 3 hours of conversation, which is a little heartbreaking, but like I would love a moment for like anything that people wanted to address, any conversations that we wanted to engage in. Like I what was really important for me is that this panel was about like, let's really talk about the things that we wanted to talk about. So like this is that space if anyone has something.
This is maybe a little more lighthearted, but it is our co-host Louis' birthday. If y'all did the after show, then you know Louis. He is freaking out right now about this panel. He
is such a huge Survivor fan.
So he
Huge
is
Survivor
sending me
fan.
text after text about how much he loves y'all. So I just want to wish Louis happy birthday.
Wow.
We love
Happy
you.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Birthday, Louie.
Happy birthday, Habibi.
We love
Now
you.
that's an ally
But
right
it's also
there.
Aaron's birthday.
It is Aaron's birthday, and Aaron made our theme song. So happy birthday, Aaron! Another king among kings. So we love our friends. They're so great.
They're both
Sorry
so
to kind of jump in there with a little more lighthearted stuff, but I knew I
Listen, we need
I
it.
I couldn't not do it for Louis.
Well, no, I mean, like, I like, and we talked about this before we went on air, but like, the experience of what it means to be a woman of color within this sphere is like heartbreaking. Like, even as a fan, it almost feels like sadomasochistic because I'm like, oh, I love this thing, but it's so awful, and it's so awful to me, but like, I still love it, and it's just like, it's heartbreaking sometimes. Like, I've cried over Survivor. I've cried over this game that I haven't even played. Karishma and Sheree, I can't imagine y'all's experiences. But like, it's
It's
heartbreaking. Crying's good, all right? Clean your eyes.
I've said this Adrian Rich quote before. I'll say it again. We have to be those amongst us. There have to be those amongst us who can weep and still be counted as warriors. And I absolutely believe that. Weeping does not make us less of warriors. It makes us more so because we are vulnerable and we are real. And I have to say that because I cry almost every podcaster.
And that's okay. Listen, very emotional over here. But I just want to extend like the greatest thank you to this entire panel and like Karishma and Shireen and Jatia who just left. Like, thank you so much for like sharing space with us, like your actual experiences out there, because we can only speak to what it means to watch the show. It means the world to me. As a super fan, it means the world to me. So thank you both so much for coming on here.
Thank you
for having us.
Yeah.
Jalen, Jennifer, also thank you. Like Jalen, we've talked about how much of you're a super fan. So like what did this getting to like speak to people that have actually played, what did this feel like for you? I have to ask that question.
I'm definitely gonna like get off the stream and like cry for a brief moment. I'm like, that's just the reality of like what is about to happen. It feels very surreal right now. But I think it's about connecting this thing that happens on my TV and has only happened on my TV to real life. And I think that's the power of Survivor and the power of the Sequester community, is that it brings together these worlds that feel so very separate at times and be like, oh, this is a thing I could do.
Yeah.
These are people that I could be and talk to and interact with. And it's not just this like fantasy world, but it is a thing in communities that we create. And I think Sequester gives me a lot of hope for what a Survivor or a Big Brother could be if we were more inclusive, if we were more intentional, if we cast more diverse casts. Like, all of these things are possible. People in power just have to do it. And so to have people recognize the community that we've created here and have people want to come back and like reinvest their time in Sequester is so powerful. And I'm just like so grateful for the signal boost that you all are using your platforms to promote this amazing community that we've built that feels like so small compared to a Survivor that's been on for 40 seasons. But like, I just know that one day we're going to be looking at Sequester in a similar way of, we've already got how many winners for Winners at War and like all of these amazing players. And so every time y'all come back, it's powerful and it's meaningful to us in such a profound way.
I like, the thing about this community is that we get to see people like us shine. I mean, this call had 4 winners in it, had 3 people who should have won. Like, that's the beauty of this game. But all righty, time. Ready, folks. It's time. Jalen, where can people find you? Or I'm sorry, Karishma, where can people find you? No, we're back.
We're back at Krishna.
That was my AOL and AIM handle, and it's held up to this day.
We love
it. Is it supposed to be Cutie Karishma?
Yeah, it's Cutie Karishma. I love it.
We love it.
Song since '98, baby.
Oh.
Hey, when it's true. What can you do?
Jalen, oh my God, I'm just not gonna say anything anymore. Suzi, you do it. I'm done. Fucking out.
Is this the correct Twitter handle for you?
It is, yes.
Great.
And I want to wish you all good luck in the Winners at War season that's coming up.
Thank
you.
Represent.
Oh, no, damn.
And then Jennifer, is this correct for you? And
Yeah.
y'all, I did this off my phone earlier. Making sure they're in. And when are we going to see you on Sequester again, Jennifer?
I don't think I'm playing anymore, but I'll be on.
Winners at War season 3, Jennifer. It's happening. I'm putting it in the space.
I'm gonna go to school. My God, it's fine.
Okay, get educated, but on the weekends, get you. And Jalen, so we will see you on Friday on the series screen. Is that correct?
Yes, and you can also catch me right after this in the Mentor Takeover mini. So I have
It's a
a whole crop
takeover.
of people. It is a takeover. Trying to get new players into the community. I've got some.
Your team looks so cute. You got two
They're
women of color on your
popping.
team.
Yes.
We love
I
to
had
see
to
it.
do it.
So yeah, everybody definitely tune in for that because that's going to be super exciting. We love having new players in Sequester. The more we can expand, the more representative it's going to be. So love those private minis. And then you can follow Podquester. Y'all know where y'all can follow us. If you found this stream,
Right.
y'all know where we at, okay? But just in case, so this is Sharifa.
For quality Sequester and BB content.
Yes. For quality depression sequester and poetry content. Happy birthday, of course, to Aaron. Make sure y'all give him a shout out. He did our theme song. And then thank you to our mods who always come up for us. We can't do this without them. And then, yeah, we will be going live in just a few minutes to provide commentary for the mentors meeting. And I think Jalen, that's going to be you, Lana. Who else is on that team?
Cammy, Dylan.
Cammy. Woo! Pretty cute
Ivan.
stream, y'all.
Yeah.
Do not miss it. All right. Thanks, everybody. Any last words from anybody before we hear that song one more time?
Can somebody tell Muna that I'm in love with her?
I will.
Muna is definitely in the comments. I don't know if you can tell that, but I will tell you one thing. This is a Muna fan cast. We considered renaming it. Just we're obsessed with Muna, but I think honestly somebody already has that name.
I think someone does. I need to steal it.
Any other last comments? Muna for life. Okay.
Muna for life.
Thank you.